Okay, I think we'll move on because it's time for Amberley to share her report. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Amberley Ruetz, who is the lead author on a report that was just published by Ruetz Consulting and funded by the Arrell Family Foundation that focuses on the economic rationale for investing in school meal programs in Canada.
My name is Amberley Ruetz, and I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Saskatchewan. And for those that don't know me, I actually first had my start in the Ontario Student Nutrition Program, working in the Southwest region. And that was really the inspiration for completing my PhD and going on to do research on school meal programs. So this past fall, I was approached by the Arrell Family Foundation with an opportunity, and we both agreed what was missing and perhaps maybe what the federal government needed to invest in a national school food program was actually the economic rationale for the investment. So what kind of returns could be expected? So myself and some colleagues through my consultancy, Ruetz Consulting, put together a new report. So I was working part-time at the time and doing this part-time to develop this great report that was really novel in the sense that it looked at the multi-sectoral impacts of investing in school meals on comparable high-income countries. So there is quite a bit of research that has specifically looked at low-income contexts and medium-income contexts, but no one had really put together the impacts on high-income contexts. So comparable countries like Sweden and the US, which are highly featured in this report, and really translated it to what this could mean tangibly for Canadians and for Canada. So this is a report that was put together by myself and a colleague, a Canadian colleague, Dr. Gabrielle Edwards, who is actually now based in Sweden, and Flora Zhang, who is a Master's of Public Health from the University of Toronto. So I'm going to be able to provide a high-level overview in the short time I have today, but I really encourage you to visit my website, amberleyritz.ca, and look at the publications tab where you'll find the full report. And under some of the sections you'll see today, it's really plain language. There's about 2 pages on each topic, so easy to digest. So anything I can't mention today will be covered in that report. So with that being said, here are some of the high-level overviews of topics that's contained in the report. And I wanted to draw your attention to this great graphic that was designed by Alex at the Arrell Food Institute. And this was really emerged from a conversation that I had with MP Julie DeBrusen a couple months ago, when we were doing that last petition. And she had said, the National School Food Program, you could really see it as the last piece or a capstone that could really complete and round out the policy supports in Canada. So this is really meant to illustrate that missing piece or the top of the arch, that last piece, the capstone, that can really round out school meals and social programming in Canada. So with that being said, I forgot to mention in my last slide that you may have seen an earlier iteration of this report as it was first published in October. And now some of the results I'll present today is the updated report in February of 2024. And the one piece I wanted to share too that I was really excited about is I was really happy with the way that this work was sequenced, because being able to release this early in October, which was still in some of its draft form that some of you may have seen, is that afforded me the opportunity to have meetings with policymakers to get feedback, really find out where maybe the missing pieces were, where the outstanding questions were. And I was also told by policymakers in Economic and Social Development Canada, as well as in AFC, or Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, that this report came just 2 weeks before they had to submit their budgets for the total of their department. So that was really great to hear. And then most recently, I've had some conversations quite a few actually within Minister Freeland's office, their policy advisor's office. So it's been great to hear that back and forth, to have them follow up with questions. So my fingers are crossed for a few weeks' time. But with all that being said, I'm going to dive into some of the results and really focus on the ones that were of most interest from policymakers, and really skirt over or fly over some of the high-level ones, of which you know all very well. So here we go. So unsurprisingly, as you all know, school meal programs are linked with improvements in the classroom based on decades of research. A lot of great research in the US and including in Canada. So that is one of the no-brainers, if you will. Another key finding is that school food programs support and improve student health, food literacy, and healthy eating patterns. There is also growing research that school food is linked to students' mental health and well-being, and are also opportunities to practice culture through food. Now, this is one of the new findings and novel findings from the report, which really looks at the short-term benefits of school meals based on savings that could be expected by parents right now if universal free meals were implemented. So based on the savings to parents in the US, modeled off of a few states, the report found that universal free school meals, meaning particularly breakfast and lunch every day at school, could save families between 130 and 190 Canadian dollars per child per month on grocery bills. So this would be a really high impact piece. And this is actually something that Don Davies in his Hill Times piece actually highlighted a few weeks ago. So it really makes the case that right now school meals could help put more money back into the pockets of Canadians, helping them with the increased cost of living right now, allowing them to afford more healthy meals at home, when students are not at school or on other parts of their household budget. Related to this, looking at the benefits for households more widely, it wouldn't just support, families in the short term, but there's also research that is found to contribute to increases of household incomes in the midterm. So again, in Sweden, what interesting finding from the report was that there was a 2.6% increase of household incomes in Sweden over the 9-year period that actually after the 9-year period in which school meals were accessible to parents. So what was really neat about this, this study was done by 3 economists in Sweden, and they found that this was a permanent increase to household incomes by 2.6%, which was not attributed to the reduced of savings on groceries. So it was actually allowing greater workforce engagement and greater incomes across the board. Also from this same study in Sweden, it was found that universal free lunches there in the short term actually increased mothers' labor market participation by 5%. And one last study that I wanted to mention, is new and novel, but I will qualify that it is in a medium income context, is that in China, the introduction of school meals, particularly lunches, led to a 9 to 14% increase in mothers' working hours per week, with the greatest incomes being attributed to low-income mothers and mothers particularly in rural contexts. And the reason I mention this is that in conversation with the author of the Swedish study, they had shared that this type of analysis is really novel in their research, and particularly novel in high-income countries. So a new area for research would be to do a similar analysis in Canada to look at precisely what this is doing to women's labor. And this was one of the studies that Minister Freeland's office was particularly keen about learning more on to make the economic rationale case. Moving on, as I know I'm nearing the end of my time, is that, in terms of the longer term impacts, there was also impacts on the child's future earning. So from Sweden, again, a very novel study that was very rare in terms of looking at the longitudinal impact of school meals. They found that students that had access to school meals, particularly lunch at school, had across the board an increased lifetime earnings of 3% more than students that did not have exposure to the school meal program. And interestingly, if you zoom into the looking glass on the screen, you'll see that amongst the lowest income bracket of students, there was a higher increase at 6%, really making the case that school meals help to contribute to more equitable societies. And there is the study for those that would want to look at it more, and it's also linked in my report. By way of wrapping up, the other key finding from the report is that overall, universal free school meals have been shown to provide a 2.5 to 7 times return in investment based on human health and economic benefits in high-income countries like the ones I was just presenting on today. So that 2.5 actually comes from the US, and it's often cited that it's about a $2 return on investment. But when you add the extra expansion of making school meals free universal, so across the board, free and universal as it was during the pandemic, that increased to 2.5. And then in Sweden, which is a more comprehensive look that took into account a few more elements, like the ones I presented on today, so namely increasing lifetime earnings and mothers' employment, you'll see that that is actually higher at a 4 to 7x return on investment. And an interesting comparison is that this same economic research piece looked at what was the comparative benefit of school lunches compared to the Head Start program, which is an early childhood nutrition program for low-income children from ages 3 to 5. And they found that there was a higher benefit cost ratio at twice the rate, really making a more conservative case for school meals. And just to close, one of the things I'm very passionate about and had conducted research in Ontario on was the potential for economic growth and job creation in school meals. So in particular, adopting a farm to school approach, so emphasizing local procurement could have massive impacts on the economy. And a piece that I did with Dr. Evan Fraser in 2019 found that school meals could add up to over 200,000 jobs across the agri-food sector and including in schools. And then in addition, based on the multiplier effects of these purchases, if 30% was spent on local food, as it's done in Brazil and other even provinces that are trying to maintain this target, $4.8 billion over 10 years could be contributed. And I end on this slide because what's important here is that these are other factors and returns that weren't included in the US research and the Swedish research, just emphasizing how much greater this could be. In closing, I wanted to note that right now, thanks to some funding from the Coalition and Jill Van Horn and New Brunswick, this report is being translated into French, and that will come, I think, within the next month. And in the meantime, there is a summary article that's available via policy options noted here that presents in a shorter format some of the findings. And I was just approved with some colleagues, Gabrielle and Flora, namely, to write a follow-up piece in the Conversation Canada, which should be published, I think, sometime early next week. So stay tuned for that. And just in case you're wondering, all the graphics that were featured in the report and in these slides today can be found on the Arrell Food Institute website here under these tabs. And this is my contact information, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.